This is part 2 of my replacement sliding router table build. I'll put links to the previous 2 videos, I know it's confusing, below in the description. In this video, I'm going to make the sliding component, the router table cabinet itself. So, let's have to it. First thing I want to find out or prove is that everything is level or in alignment. So my base is fixed solidly to the floor as per the end of part 1. So using my Stabilia level clamped to the top of the bandsaw, I'm showing 45.6. I was going to say I'd really like pretty close to 45.6, but that is bang on. What a sweet deal, so no adjustments to make. So it's not that straightforward. I've got a little bit of math to do. I've got to take that 45.6 and take off 80mm for the baseboard, which is going to sit on top of this. And then I've got to reduce it by the amount of the hardwood edge banding that I'm going to apply to the edge of the plywood. And I'm also going to introduce a 5mm gap between the baseboard and this edge, which I'll take up with the runners. That's going to give me a nice shadow line, but it's also going to allow plenty of room just in case there's any settlement that occurs. I obviously don't want any, but there might be a bit over time, and it'll ensure nothing binds. And 5mm gives me plenty of room to play with. So as mentioned, marking gauge this time instead of a pencil because I want to get dead center. So with the joint cut on the hardwood lipping, I now know the finished size of the piece, as in the amount of hardwood that's going to be showing on each side of the panels that I'm going to apply it to. And I've managed to get that down to all but 25mm, so I've got a tiny little bit of leeway that I can dispose of with probably a single pass of the plane. So 25mm each side. That means finished size width of my panels is going to be 800mm minus 50mm, nice and easy to work with. Which means that my next job is to size the baseboard for the router cabinet itself, and also the very back panel and the 2 panels that encapsulate the rotor component that make up the rotor box. As Britney Spears once said, baby, check this one more time, because this is the point of no return. 456. Beautiful. So 456 full height, minus the baseboard 18mm, minus the top board 36mm, minus the edge banding on the panels 25mm times 2, 50mm. So I got 456 minus 104 equals 352. To rate the mating female section of the joint on the plywood boards, I'm going to go with the handheld rotor. It just makes so much more sense to move the tool, which is smaller, lighter, easier to control, than to move the board across the rotor table. With the smaller pieces, I may well go back to moving those across the top of the rotor table, but we'll see how awkward they are. I think that'll do nicely. Now you may well notice I've changed to a different rotor. I started using the OF1400 because I thought it was appropriate size power for the job in hand. However, what I found was, because it's a lighter rotor, I ended up tipping at the beginning and the end of the cut. And then I started looking for a larger base. I thought I had a larger base for the OF1400. Turns out I don't. So then I ended up going online looking for a larger base, and then came back into the workshop and thought, hang on a minute, why don't I try the 2200? I didn't go with the 2200 to begin with because I thought it was too big and too heavy. Turns out it's much better for this particular job to have a bigger, heavier rotor because it's just more planted. It's natively got a larger base and a wider fence section. So, hey ho, you live and learn. So I'm going to rough cut each of the pieces I need out of each length first. Then I'll cut the miters large and then sneak up on the exact size that I want, taking the approach that I mentioned in video 1A. So I've set my plywood board on top of 2 parallel clamps so that I can place the dry side, again as mentioned in part 1A, while I get what's going to be the wet side, the glued side, perfectly aligned. And when that's beautifully in place, I can mark this side and get a perfect cut. There's a little bit of sneaking up that I do on this joint. If I've cut a little larger my mark, I'll show you that in a tick. A little trick I use, the deflection in the blade. So I'm holding this in place with some homemade face clamps, using a bit of inner tube from a bicycle tire. and they work, as you can see, perfectly. So really happy with that as my first joint. Miters both sides look really good. So this I refer to as wet piece. This will get glued on. That stays in place as a reference, and then I can give that half an hour to tack up and continue round the board. Now, I know what you're thinking. Holy oversized pizza slices, Batman. You must have more time on your hands than Big Ben. But you've got to admit, if a job's worth doing, it's worth doing well. And put in a lot of extra time and effort into a piece of shop equipment then that I'm going to be forced to look at time and time again over hopefully many years. I really want it to be beautiful. Would be fabulous if they weren't, and they look like they are. Pressure. I should have added the word pressure into the previous question. Will these clamps give me enough pressure to do what I need to do? That's come out there a little bit because it's a shade short over there. That's better. So this end has had well over an hour to go off, so I'm going to continue. Incidentally, these clamps came from Amazon, made by 𝑨𝒙𝒏𝒔𝒕𝒆, a bizarre size, 480mm clamping capacity, but they've come in so handy. And I've been promising myself to buy another set for ages, and I haven't done it. And now I'm at the point where I really wish I had. Here's the mark I made with my knife, and that's where I really want the blade to be. But sometimes it's a little difficult to see, so I'm going to cut large and sneak up on it. And this is what I was referring to before. I'm going to use deflection on the blade to make sure I don't move the piece too far. So here's the first purposely large cut. And then if I put the tip of the tooth and push just that tiny wee bit, hopefully you can see how much I'm taking off, so I can really sneak up and get bang on to that mark. Perfect. While I'm waiting for the glue to set off on the hardwood lipping, I'm going to mount the drawer runners, both for the router cabinet and for the base drawer itself. In part one, I made these runners. I think I referred to them as cabinet runners. And the job of these is to sit underneath the main cabinet and take the drawer runner proper. So I made these oversized, knowing these were 53mm. I've made these at 76mm. So it's easier for me to have it. So I've got 38mm to get to the center. But I want to raise my base cabinet up by 5mm, if you remember, which means on this side cabinet, I want to strike a line at 33mm and to keep this dead center at 38mm. So I'm going to set my woodpecker sliding square and then run a line all the way back. Now, the drawer runners I'm using for this come from Eurofit, and in fact all of my drawer runners I tend to buy from Eurofit. Number one, I really like the quality of their runners. They've got a great range, delivery's good, service is good, yada yada. But they also give you the full installation guide that you need for screw positioning, so you don't need to worry about 419. You don't need to worry about holding the rail up to figure out where your screw holes are got to be. Of course, the downside of this approach is you lose the ability to use a self-centering drill bit. Which I overcome with a little pilot hole. Just to make sure I get all the holes in exactly the right place. And then these rails take a 6.3mm screw, which needs a 5mm pilot hole. Perfect, Ma. Perfect. As discussed in part 1A, even investigated in part 1A, I'm going to clamp a little piece of off-cut, bit of leftover ash as it happens, to the back side for that additional bit of support to avoid tipping and gouging this lovely hardwood lipping. Well, my trusty little battery-powered Bosch has let me down, I'm afraid. It's got a little bit too hot. As I was routing that first side of the panel, I could hear the Bosch bogging down a little bit. Even with the larger battery on it, it just wasn't coping. It's not got enough power to cope with the amount I'm asking it to take off, because it's 25mm thick. Only 25mm deep, rather. Only a mil thick, but 25mm deep. And it's just not got the power in it to deal with it. So it looks like I'm finally going to be forced to go and buy myself a higher powered battery palm router. Which one will it be? There's a reason to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss that decision. All my preparations are complete. Everything up to this point has been really preparing the panels to make the cabinet with, and I'm finally there. So my jointing approach for the cabinet is going to be dominoes, as you've seen me use many a time in the past. similar to biscuits, fantastic for alignment. Add a little bit of strength. Not going to get into that argument, but I think they add a little bit of strength to the joint, but superb for getting everything perfectly in line. So I'm going to start with the back panel onto the baseboard. I've got it all oriented the way that I want it. 3 dominoes per panel will be more than enough to help me get it in exactly the right place and add a little bit of strength. As mentioned in a previous video, or lifetime, not sure which one it is at the moment, I'm going to be using 2 sheets of MDF glued together for the surface. The reason for that is the plywood that I bought is shite. It's a steaming turd. The surface of it is that bad. It's up and down like a horse drawers, and I really can't have that as the surface for my lifelong router table, or a few years anyway, at least until I get bored with it and decide to make a new one. So exactly the same as the base cabinet, the top is going to be lipped with 25mm of sapele all the way around. I'm sure you're all familiar with the phrase, I know it's a mess, but I know where everything is. And also the situation when you have a good old tidy up and you find new places for things that seem right, given your current frame of mind, you can no longer find them again. Well, that just happens to be the case with my 4-inch roller. This could take a while, in which case I'll put some lovely music on for you to listen to. Well, I would put some lovely music on for you to listen to if I could find any. The only thing I can safely use is the free stuff in the YouTube music gallery. I think a nice bit of Vivaldi would go down well, or maybe even Barber's Adagio, Holst the Planets, Mozart's Clarinet Quintet even. But instead, and that's me done for the day. Good night. So this is dried overnight. I'm going to trim it to size with the track saw, and then I'm going to butt glue, because I've got 36mm now as an edge, the hardwood lipping to it. Drop it on top of the cabinet and see whether my calculations worked. While I'm waiting for the glue to set on the top panel, I'm going to secure my baseboard and my side panels to my sliding assembly. This is going to be a mechanical fix. My support slider stops 40mm back from the front, so I'll put my first screw at 75 and then I'll work back 150mm increments. I'm going to use pocket screws to secure these panels to the baseboard. For the minute, they'll be on the inside, so they're not going to look unattractive because you won't be able to see them. But they also, when I actually glue it up together, they'll also act as clamps to keep everything together, so I won't need to try and finagle some kind of way to clamp the middle bit. And again on the top board, but on the top board they will be removed. I don't want any screws in there in case I start adding fixtures and fittings to the road cabinet at a later date. Oh, that weighs a bloody ton. In essence, that's the carcass of the router cabinet itself, completed, bar the finishing steps. Obviously, I've got to sand the top, I've got some sharp edges to deal with, some general finishing up. I need to accommodate the fact that the electric trunking at the back is fouling the top from sitting back fully. But I'm kind of out of time for this video. So I'm going to draw it to a close now and make you wait to find out whether this is level with that until the next thrilling installment. I do hope you'll join me for part 3, the 4th video in the series. Thanks for watching and hope to see you next time. Ta-ra!